after that beginning, it's maybe a bit of a disappointment, but as always, my mad editor Jim is busy over, he spends too much time in that dark room. Anyway, I love it. It's beautiful. Couple of odd things to comment on before I get into the comments from last year. Number one, please pray for me. I'm gone from Android to Apple and still trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. And number two, I saw something quite interesting today. A new Kickstarter for a memorial for Gary in Lake Geneva. Marvelous idea, a worthy goal, etc. Except my eyes kind of boggled on the amount of money they were attempting to raise. Now, I'm not saying it can't be done, but the baseline's $150K, and they're going to put a table in a spot in the park at the library, and it's going to have a map etched on the top and all that, and it's for people to sit down. And then at $250, they're going to put in a throne-like chair at the end, and then at $500, a statue of Gary, and then at $700. Now, I might not have these in the exact same, the exact correct sequence, and then more, then a statue of Gary, and then a dragon on a treasure box. I mean, this is $925,000 that they're starting a Kickstarter for soon. I only got 2 questions, and I wasn't able to find the answer to either one quickly, clicking around. Number one, the main stumbling block all those years ago, and was for many years, is, has the city approved it yet? I might have missed it, but I didn't see any mention. And number 2, who's involved with it? Because if the widow's involved, I'm going to have nothing to do with it whatsoever. Because she jerked us all around on a chain. And if she's really got all that money she raised before, then I challenge her to donate it to this new one if she's not already involved in it, and get them off to a flying start. Because, after all, you raised that money from us, the gamers, on the promise that you've never kept. Oh, on a third note, if I seem to be sinking a little, I've changed chairs because the other one made my back uncomfortable. But this one has a nasty habit of losing the pressure in the hydraulic tube, so I might sink down as the evening goes. Okay, let's start doing some curmudgeonly stuff. I only started listening recently, but I must say I love listening to your thoughts. I'm glad I found you through a video from D&D Shorts referencing an episode all the way back to number 95. Oh my God. I was a young man and had hair. No, didn't have the hair. And I really wasn't that much younger. I hope to see and hear much more of you for many years to come. Yeah, well, I hope to be here for many more years to come to say shit. All right, here we go. No, this guy just loves to bust my chops. You've often said that players asking questions about the environment their PCs are in is very important. Question: do you always know the answer to PC questions? Well, if I don't, I certainly wouldn't let them know that. Or is this a collaboration where the questions prompt creative decisions on your part? Well, if I just got done describing a big cavern covered in glittering crystals all over the ceiling and stalactites and stalagmites, and they wanted to know how cold it was, I'd tell them, a lot of it I can use common sense and what it probably is just from nature, or I can make it especially cold and create a sense of ominous foreboding or whatever. And occasionally I hadn't thought about it, and I just blurt out an answer, and that's what the truth becomes. All right, question 2. What is the purpose of PCs asking questions mechanically? Well, I don't know what you mean by mechanically. Why should PCs ask questions? They should ask as many questions as they feel they need to make an informed decision about what the hell they're doing and where the hell they're doing it and under what conditions. Because it's not for me to sit and read 300 words of flavor text. That's not it. I'm not going to write stuff where I describe every minute detail of a room. Now, I'm not going to leave out anything important, and trick anybody, but I don't feel that I need to write it all out. Very often, I've given this example before. When I have a party, come across a big sparkly cavern, I tell them, what's it look like? Well, think about every neat cave video, every neat National Geographic thing you saw, and the most impressive cavern there that had sparkles in the ceiling, and that's what it looks like. Now, that just saved me a ton of time describing the ins and outs of the stone formation, the scattering of the crystals, the dancing of the shadows and the light, yeah. So from that, it doesn't matter if you see something you saw in Carlsbad Caverns and somebody else sees something in their mind that they saw in Germany, doesn't matter. You each have a picture of a large cavern underground that sparkles. That's all you need. Now, further questions? If they're useful, if they're worthwhile, I will answer them. If they start getting silly, I'll just tell the group to move on. Because, you only need so much detail, especially when you're exploring. You don't need to know if the grains of sand are as fine as it would be on a white sand beach on a tropical island, or more coarse and gritty as you might, it's sand. Okay. Well, oh yeah, thank you, I'm better. Just wanted to say hello, and then I'm planning on weaving The Curse of the Weaver Queen into the Shadow Dark campaign I'm currently running. It's a spooky, witchy themed campaign, so I think it'll be a fun fit. Looking forward to reporting back to you as we get into it. Maybe I'll even come up with some questions. Well, great. I'm glad to hear you're using it. I may be able to answer questions. I might not, because that was expanded upon considerably after I sold it. But I probably can. So if you get them, ask them. All right, this next one. It's like he wants to be a game show. Well, if you want to play a game show, pay me. Challenge number 1, Villains of History, Heroes of Mechanics. Well, let's see. What is it? Let's see. Pick a historical villain. Well, you give me some I have to. Okay, so pick Vlad, Genghis, Rasputin, or Attila, and walk us through how you'd adapt them into a classic D&D module. Well, if we're going to talk about a classic D&D module, unless you're talking about something around 15th to 20th level, which is, yeah, right. I wouldn't put my players up against anybody that evil. No. I wouldn't do it. Vlad the Impaler, a madman. I would be, if I were to put Vlad the Impaler into an adventure, and he somehow was crossed or angered or pissed off by the players, that would be it. TPK, game over. Because he'd just impale them all. Genghis Khan, you claim your royalty? Fine, we'll wrap you in a fur, and then we'll use your head for a polo ball. Rasputin, Rasputin. There's one, he might be the evil bad guy behind the plot. Because it wasn't like he commanded, tens of thousands and have the ability to run amok. What class and level? They don't need a class and level. Why? Why would you need that? When you set out to make an ultimate bad guy in your campaign, if I were to do it, I would not waste time wondering what class and level would they be. I would quantify things like hit points and saving throws only because the mechanics require it. And quite probably, for instance, Rasputin, you couldn't kill him with poison. He'll always make a saving throw. Because he did. And what powers or quirks would reflect? Well, their historical persona. Again, we're only going to look at Rasputin here. He's a poisoner, a liar, a con man, and a bullshit artist. How would you tweak their alignment, motivations, or magic abilities to make them playable or terrifying? Well, I wouldn't have to do anything to Rasputin. I'd have him lawful evil, lawful because he had his own goals that he ruthlessly set out to get. He reacted in most of the time in expected ways, or reacted in expected ways. And most importantly, how could you use them to challenge players beyond just combat? Well, if it came down to combat against the big bad evil guy, the jig's already up anyway. So how would I challenge him? I put every trap, trick, misleading clue, red herring that I possibly could. That's how I'd do it. But it's no fun. As much of a history buff as I am, I don't see a great deal of pleasure in doing that. I'd rather make up my own bad guys. Okay, next. In old school D&D, why was the cleric only why was the cleric only allowed to use maces, clubs, and stave? Nothing pointed like swords, arrows, etc. Well, I imagine that the in-world reason was that pointing weapons were against their religion. But were there any mechanical gating reasons why Gygax or Arneson limited the club? Well, Gary was fascinated by the warrior bishops of the Middle Ages, and the Catholic Church, the Roman Church at the time, said that clerics were not allowed, their priests and their bishops were not allowed to shed blood. But bashing a guy in the head with 4 pounds of spiky metal through his helmet, to me, is just as likely to cause bloodshed. Just because it's in the helmet and you can't see it doesn't mean it didn't happen. So the clerics were limited in that regard to make them more adhere to the fighting bishops, the battling bishops of that period of time. That was the ideal that the cleric was developed around. And, Bishop Odo, which I believe was William's brother, killed a whole lot of men. And I'm sure some of them, and I'm sure most of them bled. But because you couldn't see it, and because he wasn't using a proscribed weapon, he merrily went into battle with his brother's troops and bashed heads. So that's why Gary and I don't know how much influence in this particular area Dave had, because these were pretty well established by the time I came to him. And the answer I got when I asked Gary one time why was that you remember that the game was originally set in the Middle Ages. It was originally intended for miniatures players, and Middle Ages were a period that many miniature players were familiar with. So there had to be some limitations to rein in the possibilities to make them conform to the Middle Ages. So that's why. Was it to keep fighters and clerics from being too similar? Oh, hell no. Either one of them can turn your brains to mush and kill you. No, it's just that they had to do it in a different way. And if they didn't, then they lost some of their more beneficial skills and abilities. Now, in my world, yes, I still limit clerics to non-edged weapons, but really just to make a distinction, make the clerics a little different, make them a little, work a little harder, give them some what I feel are realistic limitations that make them hew the line of middle-aged prelates. Or was it to make sure there was always a party member who could bash skeletons, which usually are hard for pointy weapons to kill? I don't have any problem at all with clerics not being able to use pointy or edged weapons. Live with it. It's a rule. It's a limitation. It makes them different from fighters. There is a distinction there. And why is a cleric good to have in a group? Well, you just mentioned skeletons, undead. They have an innate ability to do that. They don't necessarily need a weapon. They need their holy symbol, whatever that is. And if you play straight up rules, a spell, if you play in my world, a prayer, that enables them to do that. Really enjoyed this episode, especially your thoughts on letting players do the heavy lifting and not obsessing over levels, and your comment about how easy it is to drop historical figures into a D&D adventure with just a few tweaks. That idea lit a fire in my imagination, got me thinking about a twist on character creation rooted in history. Oh, I think you may be thinking this way too hard. But hey, whatever floats your boat. Oh, wait a minute, I just read this. Oh. Okay, well, this person seems to think some of the same... Wait a minute, let me back up here. Yeah, you're asking me the same question again. Would Vlad be a blood-themed dark paladin gone dark? I don't know. I don't know. I haven't done it. I don't predict. I create according to the circumstances and the objective. So I don't know. No deep dive coming. Okay, solidarity, unseasonal sickness. I'm failing my saving throws, slow recovery. If you make yours, yeah, I've made most of mine. In D&D Timcast edition, what number range do the stats turn from negative to +0, and then from +0 to positive minus? Whoa. Stats. I'm not even sure it's... Okay, you give me a DCC example. 10 was always 10 through 12 was +0. I'm really having difficulty understanding this question. If 9 to 12 is the average, stake that out as your average, and then go accordingly up or down. Otherwise, that comment's way too convoluted and unclear. I'm compiling some of my longtime house rules for an XD&D campaign. Among them was requiring training to advance experience levels. Have you run campaigns with training for level advancement? If so, what was your experience? No. That's not a rule I've ever liked. Ever. And to the best of my recollection, we never, in any of the games we played in Lake Geneva, did that. I believe that was something that came out later. Certainly wasn't what we played. My take on that is that, okay, you're a 4th level fighter, and arbitrarily I'm going to pick a number out of the skies. Don't say I was wrong. You need 6,000 more points. You need 6,000 points to go to the next level, experience points. I'm just picking a number out of the air, argumentatively. And you toil away, and you toil away, and you toil away. And for one thing, and I'll stop right here. And for one thing, I never totaled experience until well after the adventure was over. Okay, back to the present here. And you're toiling along, and you at some point after so many adventures, you hit that 6,000th point. No, that's not how it works in my world. When the adventure's over, and you're back resting, whatever resting might be, back camped in a secure camping zone, in a flea bag inn, whatever, then was when promotions happened. And I didn't believe the way I look at the hit points, the way I've always looked at them from the very beginning, and as they were done in the very beginning, the ability, a measure of the ability to avoid a fatal blow. No talking about critical hits and losing limbs and fingers and all that kind of stuff. No. That was not a consideration. Having achieved those 6,000 more points, or whatever my arbitrary number is, having achieved those, you have learned the tricks. You have learned another weird, get out of the way motion, or another. You've already earned them. You're not going to have to go train. You've become better by living long enough to be advanced. I always thought having to go off and train was a load of hogwash. You've acquired those skills. And once you're back up to your original normal hit points, you can't, I would think about what condition you were in if you just, drug your sorry ass back into town half chewed up and we're in for an extended stay of healing. Nah, you got to heal before you go up. But I'm not going to send you off to boot camp. I think that's a waste of the player character's time and effort. And it's just an abstract anyway. Okay, yeah, you got to go, and it'll take you a week to get there, 2 weeks to do it, and a week to come back, so you're out for a month of game time. It's all abstracted anyway. So what's the problem? No, I don't believe in that. And just my personal, I don't believe in it because of the way that I view hit points. Hit points aren't more muscle, bone, and blood. They are increased skills and abilities. And I see absolutely nothing to say that if you wanted to say that your player character weighed 165 pounds when he started out, obviously by the time he got up a few levels, he's honed off all the baby fat. He's lean, mean muscle machine. In getting to be that lean, mean muscle machine, he has picked up more skills, tricks, and ability, and in the honing of his skills and reflexes, he has received whatever he needs to go up to the next level. Now, that's a fighter or a cleric or even a thief. Maybe a thief, maybe not, depending upon the campaign setting. Wizards, magic users. Well, when you're 11th level and you're looking for training, how hard is it to find somebody that's going to train you up to be a 12th? Not going to happen. So it's my opinion that if wizards get a pass on that, because if you're going to play a magic user as traditionally written about, they're secretive, they're solitary, and they're suspicious. They're not going to train you up to be as good as they are for fear you'll knock them off. But fighters, clerics, they acquire experience along the way. They don't need to go to school. On the subject of hirelings and henchmen, who runs that NPC? Who paid for him? Did the party pay for him? The party runs him. The player, the DM, or both. Now, okay, where does the DM come in? He's not going to let you take that NPC and bash his head against the door trying to get it down until he's dead. No, that's abuse. And no, that's not going to happen. Simply because I'm going to say, come on, how stupid do you think this guy is? He's not going to do that. But if they use their NPCs wisely, henchmen I always skirted around and away from. Henchmen really in the worlds I've created and played in really only came into play when you went off to the wilderness to set up your own duchy. Well, then you took your henchmen with you. If you're playing a thief-heavy campaign, henchmen can come into play. But NPCs were by far and away the most frequent non-player additions to the groups back in Lake Geneva. And they were hired to do specialist work, wet work. Bunch of 4th level, roughly, player characters. They're going to need some firepower. They're going to go out and try to find a 5th or a 6th level hedge wizard. Somebody who's not name status in a tower yet, but anxious for some money and tough. And that's just good character play, in my opinion. Being smart enough to go find a specialist to do your dirty work, even though I'm going to make them expensive. But if you really need that fireball, you'll pay it. The party has hired a man-at-arms type to provide a little extra muscle. Orcs ambush the party. The leader of the party yells to the hireling, defend the wizard. Who gets to say what exactly the hireling does? He defended the wizard. And if somebody singles out the wizard, that's a different story. Now, it's unlikely that the leader's going to holler that in a game of mine anyway, because I seldom do one-on-one paired-off combat. Particularly meeting combat is a swirling, confused. Think of a cartoon fight where there's an elbow here and a foot out there and some stars, and the initial impact or initial contact, if you will, I treat much like that. Now, if the situation devolves down into more paired-off fighting, well, then it's going to depend on how smart is the hireling. Given that he's going to have to be at least a 9 to get hired, unless he's just there to be a pack mule, how smart is he? And then would he do that or wouldn't he do that? I may tell whoever's saying the NPC does it. No, he doesn't. He's smarter than that. He's not going to, crazy glue himself across the door so nobody can get in. No. So what does the hireling do? He defends the wizard. And that means he joins into the generalized melee. But it also means that in that generalized melee, the wizard is much, 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 much less likely to get hit because he is being defended. And so that's a very useful trade for for that NPC to provide. Okay, you were discussing leveling up. I think I know the answer, but I'll ask anyway. How do you feel about the concept that at the end of an adventure, everyone levels up, no individual calculations? I think this came into use in the weekly Adventurers League games. Each module was supposedly designed to provide enough challenge and loot to everyone to move to the next level. Well, I'm not familiar with these modules. As a general principle, I did that a couple of times in the early days down in Carbondale. When it had been, we'd gone several sessions without any calculation of who's what, where and what. I just say, yeah, okay, everybody's up a level, and maybe some of you are more than that. So even if I didn't get around to finishing out the fine calculations, next time we got together, everybody's playing at the new level. Now, if one of the, I say this because the group that I had in Carbondale was very well knit, very cohesive, and very unselfish. And very good, I might add. So I was spoiled right off the stick. I can see where once in a while, but I can also see where that could be grotesquely unfamiliar, or unfair rather, in the case of one class needs so many, 15,000 to go up, and the other one needs 10, so everybody goes up one. Well, not fair to the 15, or it's over. It has its possibilities. It has its possibilities. But as a blanket rule, no. I don't think I'd care to do that. Oh, here's a brave individual. I plan on trying out your Psionics system, and I would like to aim to play it as close as possible to your original design and invention. For that reason, I'm only using AD&D to fill in any possible gaps which might be present in Eldritch Wizardry. For example, in AD&D it says, psionic combat takes place at a rate of 1 exchange per segment, 10 exchanges per melee. Yeah, well, it says that because when I was writing this for D&D, we didn't have those 10 segments. Not like that. The sequence of play was different. And how much time in actual segment might have been different too. But, okay, I would say go ahead and try to play it as written in AD&D, because AD&D took what I wrote for D&D and had only posited as a tiny, teeny, weeny, little itty bitty possibility of someone having these skills, and solely for the purpose of giving a party the potential. Here's one of those hedge wizards. If you got somebody, if you know you're up against a mind flayer, and you don't have the capability of taking it out at a distance, and you can hire a wizard that could do it for you, that's a great reason to do it. And having a psionic ability when dealing with something highly powerful psionic would only give you percentage points in regard to resistance. So go ahead, run it as AD&D says, because when I wrote it, there were no rounds and segments. We were still working that out. Well, I'm not going to read this next one. He's identified as a trumper. His only comment was that we could beat him at access, but he could beat us at making money. Well, yeah, well, he cheats. Most of us are forced to play by the laws. He cheats. making money or whatever. He cheats. Would you say D&D is like art or music, in that once released, people put their own interpretation on it, and the game changes based on the people playing it? That's interesting. Yeah, we saw the need to create modules, the G series, because of that. Every group had gone home and reinterpreted the music. Gone back to their group and reinterpreted the music. And so some of those interpretations were pretty avant-garde, and some of them were kind of revisionist. And so we said, well, let's show them how to do this and give a quantifiable measurement, and etc. So basically, we gathered all the little string quartets and gave them different sheet music. But we wanted them to make interpretation. Please remember that so many of the rules that so frustrate the bean counter rules lawyers players today, we did on purpose. We wanted to leave it open to personalization. We wanted the DM to make it his. And if he wanted to do something this way, great. If somebody else wanted to do it that way, that was okay too, because it all boiled down to whether the players came back next time. Believe me, we wanted you to play fantasy role-playing. And it was not the way we do it. That's not the way we did it. Here's how we do some of this stuff. Here's rules for doing it. Go away, have fun, tell us how it came out. Now it's rules dogma, as though it were graven in stone or etched in steel. Did I ever play Samurai Swords? If that was the role playing, no. I think there was a board game, Milton Bradley or one of them. So I've played if it's a board game, probably. If it's a role playing, no. Clarify that, and I'll try to give you a better answer next week. Historical villains. Yeah, I currently teach history, and sometimes it bogs my mind when DMs or Hollywood fails to find a good inspiration for a villain. Want to make Strahd even more vicious? Give him Dracula's historical background and have a foreign army invade Barovia and see what he does to his own people to prevent that army from occupying his lands. All right. Now, I'll make an admission here. I don't design in the grand political sense. I like to story arcs and adventures. So I would never get involved to that level and have him slaughtering off his own people in that. Unless I was using that as a background and a group came to you saying, can you kill this son of a bitch because he's killing us? But then again, I don't like... I'd rather write an adventure about going through the ruins of the old castle and its many levels than I would an adventure about going down and looting everything in the county or the shire. Not capital S Shire, but anyway, the parish, if you will, if you can go to Louisiana. Well, okay. Again, these are swords and spells inspired scenarios, because these are involving armies. And yeah, if you want to go up into that high level of population, sure. All right, let's see. Well, that's the last comment. What do you know? Always glad to get plenty of comments to talk about. We don't bring politics into there. I almost slipped last time. It's really hard, especially as a former history teacher. But anyway, we don't go there. This is politics free. And I know how most gamers think and a lot of things anyway. I've been one for too many years. So, let's see, what's coming up? Ooh, Halloween's coming up. Well, not for a while. I played again with the crew in Okinawa, and we had a great time. We're still playing Lost Adventures. They have looted the ruins and rescued what children are still left alive, but they have to get back through the glacier and all its winding, twisting, circular tunnels, slipping and sliding with the children. So we'll see how that goes. Got a new group coming up I'm going to be playing with on September 28th. I'm excited about that. We're going to be playing the wheel. And I'm going to be playing with Okinawa again toward the end of the month. But October 5th, we're going to have our drawing at 10 a.m. for from the number of Patreons. And I've begun to find all kinds of weird stuff that I'm going to start giving away or incentivizing. For instance, I have a T-shirt from North Texas RPG Con that is, I believe, only one or five or six made. Every year, the con, Doug, had a slightly different logo. It was always a dragon and a shield involved. But every year they had a slightly different logo, which I thought was a brilliant idea. And after a while, Doug started putting on the back of the T-shirts, particularly the guests, the logos of ones that they've been to. So I have a T-shirt, says Knight Valiant on the front, and it has the 11th logo, and I have the 10 shield logos on the back. Who's turning on the lights? Hang on. Demented lunatic, my cat, chasing a fly down on the far end of the basement up against light switches. That's what that... Anyway, hell, I don't even remember where I was. That was such a disconcerting interruption. Well, having blown the entire mood, thank you, Luca, you demented furry little... I'll say to Dadagovi and see you next time. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, a curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when the rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's a curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought Psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. DSR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.